Well, first of all, I want to thank Nina and the rest of the GTD team for inviting us to come out and talk about a program called Perusall that we've been using this semester in our Geology 101 course. My name is Lance Tully. I'm a second-year geology PhD student here at USC.
I'm Katherine Ryker. As Lance said, I'm often associated with our Geology 101 intro geology kinds of classes. I study geoscience education, so that is my area of research, means I study how people teach and learn in intro classes.
Our objectives for today are to get you guys familiar with this collaborative e-reader software called Perusall. And the hope is you get enough information today to decide, is this something I might want to explore for my own class? And specifically, what we'll spend most of our time doing is this last objective, talking about how Perusall has really helped us not only increase, I think, the value of the content we're providing to the students, not only their learning, but really build this sense of community, which is pretty hard in a 170-person classroom, even if you're face-to-face, much less online. All right, Katherine mentioned some of the motivations around this course that we have, and we all have this first one, right? We want to provide effective teaching for our students so they master this material efficiently. And in our case, as Katherine said, we've got a large classroom. It's online. Most of our students are non-majors. We wanted to make sure that given the cost of tuition that's rising and books in general, we wanted to provide a free platform. So the book is totally free, and Perusall, the software we chose, is totally free as well. And then finally, we wanted something that was going to be manageable for the students, easy to understand. As you've seen, if you've played with this is totally integrated into Blackboard, which is nice. They're not having to download additional software. It's easy to use. And then also on our side, we wanted something that is from the instructor side was easier for us to manage as well. Here on the left, you have a couple of graphs that show exam performance with Perusall. So the graphs show on the x-axis exams, so you have exams 1 through 5, and then average scores on the right. And then on the y-axis, you have the average exam score for these individual exams. The dark bars are without Perusall, and the light bars are with Perusall. And these are two different cohorts in each of two different semesters that had the same course. And what you can see, with almost without exception, their scores are higher when they use Perusall. Again, this is a software that forces them not only to just read the material, but as you'll see in a couple minutes, it forces them to interact with it and think about it. And their scores are based on their level of comprehension of the material or the depth that they look at it and question it.
So when you click on this link, and actually I'll just do it to bring it up. As Lance said, this is integrated into Blackboard. We do set it up so that it opens in a new window, just so they have it in a new tab or a new window. It will take you right to the assignment. You can see that I downloaded this article on the 28th for posting. Colors got a little bit washed out, but as we scroll through, what you'll see is some people who have started highlighting. So Rhonda highlighted the name of the Jezero crater. Oh yeah, I didn't even know that crater had a name. And wait, it included the remains of a lake and a river delta. I didn't even know there was water on Mars. And you can see there's other people logged on here. I can turn it on so that these are anonymous. What we have done with Geology 101 is that we've set students up into groups based on their lab section. So Lance mentioned building community was a really important driver for us this semester. We wanted to make sure that students were interacting with names that they would be familiar with from other parts of the class. And so they start to recognize each other a little bit more and build a sense of each other's personalities beyond this is a black box on Zoom or Blackboard Collaborate, and I don't know, it's the person who sometimes types in the chat. So they're getting to know each other a little bit more just through those kind of small interactions. I can see, and you should be able to see as a student, anywhere that there's highlighting from other students. I will say the first time we did this, students reacted somewhat predictably for intro students. They're not quite sure what's important, so you get mass blocks of highlighting. And then over time, that's calmed down to where people are really focusing on, okay, I see that that's not as useful, so I'm highlighting smaller and more focused sections of the text. So it was nice to have a couple of early assignments where the highlighting wasn't so important. You can also see things like this destination Jezero multiple of us found this to be a cool sentence or something that we wanted to interact with. So we have Katherine, Lydia, Lance, Rhonda, Nina, and I have all highlighted or commented on this. This particular piece of text has gotten a lot of engagement. So Nina highlighted this one early in the week and said, I learned that Hope is smart enough to operate somewhat autonomously since signals to Mars take 11 minutes to travel. So this was upvoted by the instructor, which tells other students, oh, that's a really interesting point. It might be something that I want to engage with. And it's been upvoted by other students. So again, you, Nina, in this case, earn points for the more engaging your comments are. And on this end, because I'm in instructor mode right now, you can see that each of these comments has a score. Perusall scores each comment just with its AI system by default on a scale from 0 to 2. 0 is not at all engaging, 1 is potentially engaging, 2 is very engaging. And they have some longer definitions in their scoring details, but that's kind of the gist of it. I can go in and say, I really thought this was actually an even better score. So I'm going to say that's actually a 2. I'm going to bump up Nina's score right now. I don't have to. And one of the things that I think has actually been a benefit to Lance and I this semester is that students don't see their scores for an individual, what they call annotation. So for a comment or question. So we're not spending any time arguing about, well, that should have been a 1, it should have been a 2. What we tell students is just Perusall is going to score you for engaging thoughtfully with the text and engaging with one another. It's not going to take you a huge amount of time. Just go in and engage until you see your score get to whatever you want it to be. And what we've seen is that almost every student engages far more with the text than what they need to max out their score. Like if they're going in and working on the assignment, they do far more work than what the system actually requires them to do to get to their 10 out of 10 or whatever the max assignment score is. There's a social component to Perusall. So Nina, I think it will have sent you or did it send you an email when you got tagged?
Yes, it did.
Ha, you got reminded of your upcoming Gamecock Teaching Days reading, because even though, like Rhonda was saying at the end there, like even though she had done her reading, someone was calling her back into the text and saying, I'm responding to you here. So there's a social component where students can tag each other. You can also use hashtags to tie together different conversations. So we'll get students using words like hashtag definition. Definition as a comment is something that would absolutely score a 0 because it doesn't require a ton of thought and is unlikely to get a lot of engagement from other students. But your score will go up based on your top quality annotations, and I'll go back into that in just a second. So I can see all the different conversations here. If I kind of go through, you can see which ones I've clicked on and read or I haven't read. Orange question marks mean that there's a question that's been unanswered. So Chris asked, does this mean that Mars was habitable before Earth was habitable? I can say, you know what? I want to know that too. I want to elevate that question. That's something that I also have. And we have, Rhonda's chimed in, Chris has responded. You know what? I want to boost Rhonda's score there and say, you know what? You took the time to respond to someone else. I'm going to bump her score up. I like to go in, Lance and I usually go in the day before we are teaching to kind of see what the conversation is like. And Lance is going to talk a little bit more about how that works. We also get notifications. You can see I have an active one here when we get mentioned. So I got an email because Lydia tagged me back into the reading. Man, keeping me coming back. And so I got an email, and then when I log into the system, I get this little notification that says I have something to respond to. Now there's some social pressure because I'm going to see Lydia in lab later this week to go in and say something back to her comment. Maybe, oh yeah, why do we do this? Are the other 7 spacecraft there? Maybe I want to Google that. Maybe I want to dive a little bit deeper because this is something that's in the news right now, or just because someone's asked. I just kind of want to find out a little bit more. You can go into, if you're in Perusall, you can click on My Scores, and it will show you what you have for the week. If I go to Gradebook, I can see everyone's score. But let's look at some of these, like how you get to different scores. So let's say, like, Chris, I'm going to pick on you as our grad student liaison. So if I click on this 7.4, what I can see is that Chris has made a total of 9 annotations. Of the top 3 annotations, his average score is a 1, so that's contributing to a score. He's distributed them throughout the text. All right, so go ahead and put yourselves in the mind of a student if you were assigned this and you were, your initial response is like, okay, how do I beat the system? I'm just going to put all my comments on the first page. No, Perusall is going to ding you for that. And you can actually tell Perusall how much to do that. So you're trying to encourage students to spread their comments out throughout the reading. He's read 35%, or he's done 35% of the annotation. That's in part because he hasn't gotten at least 3 comments that have a 2. He's opened the assignment at least once. I think that actually means that you've opened it maybe more than once. You've read, you've got the maximum points for reading. You've spent a few minutes reading it. That's the active reading component. You've gotten some responses or some upvotes, or you've given other people upvotes, and so your overall score is a 7.4. There are other ways, so I'm going to pick a score that's somewhat similar. We'll say Nina is at a 6.9. Nina only had 1 annotation, so it's giving me a message. Oh, no, she needs to do a little bit more to get her full credit. But she has really good comments, so her average is at a 2. Because she hasn't distributed them, because there's only 1 comment, they're not distributed, it's not giving her any points for the distribution there. And then you can see various percentages for these other bits and pieces. So what we tell students is that there are a lot of different ways to get to a 100. And you can set that up as the instructor. Let's say we'll go into this, the Hunt for Life on Mars, and I'll go to scoring. This is something that you can change for every assignment if you want to, or you can set some default rules for the course. So how Lance and I have set up most of the assignments for Geology 101 is to really heavily weight this annotation because we wanted to promote this sense of community and collaboration. You can get up to 70% of your score based on 3 annotations. And we've told the program, do not allow responses to go past the deadline. We really want to encourage students to be engaging with the reading while their peers are engaging with it, not so much doing late work. You can override this if you have a student who needs to be doing an assignment late for whatever reason. That's absolutely something Perusall will let you do it very easily. Like I said, there's a penalty that you can apply if responses are not distributed evenly. We usually keep that one pretty low. If they get engaged with something early and often early, then that's fine. They can get up to 20% for opening the assignment before the deadline, and then an additional, or they get 10% each time they open the assignment before the deadline. So think about what that's encouraging your students to do. It's encouraging your students to spread their reading out throughout the week so that they're not cramming all of their document reading for America's founding documents onto Monday, and then by the time they get to Thursday, it's like, I don't know what happened. But every time they open assignment, they're getting incentivized. They're getting a little carrot. They'll see their score go up. They get scores for how much of the document they read, how long they've spent reading, and Perusall will check to see if their computer has gone idle. So they can't just open it in a separate tab and kind of leave it up and let their score run up. I did check that. We put a pretty heavy weight on getting responses. So again, that goes back to the we want these to be engaging things. So if you're getting responses from your peers, that tells us that you've asked good questions or you've made really helpful comments. Same thing for upvoting. You can get credit for both getting upvotes from other students and upvoting others. So you're incentivized to participate in this little community that you have. Perusall will give you some different metrics and analytics so we can see where the grades are being distributed. We've got, 1 out of 7, 1 out of 10. Other people are still working on this, or it hasn't given it enough time to kind of populate their scores. We can see the submission time heat map, which Lance and I laugh at because, you see the frequency of responses build up at different points in the week. So here we are at March 3rd, 21% of, guys, go to bed. 21% of responses were submitted around 12 a.m. 24% were submitted last night around 10. So some of y'all are night owls. And then we have, and this one is pretty common for us to see, is coming right up to the deadline. This is where we start to see even more annotations build up, but you'll see them populate kind of throughout the week. And And it gives you just a sense of when students are doing their work. We can see the page views for any given assignment, or we can look at individual student activities. Other reports that this gives, I can see the overall student progress, the number of comments and questions. I see, man, 25 minutes average reading time, the most upvoted annotations. And if I click on these are hyperlinked. And so if I want to see what that question is tied to, I can click on it and it will take me to the spot in the reading where that comment is coming up. I can also see who are my most active students. What we found really early in the semester was, we get some who would put in like 68 comments, but then when you'd go and look at their comments, they were all things like definition, important, and so they weren't getting any points for them. So they learn that over time, like how to interact with the platform. I can see all comments. If I want to go through really quickly, this is also a way that I can kind of get a sense of, scores that might need to be changed. So like this is a score. The score in green is one that I changed from a 1 to a 2. Maybe I'll just bump myself up. That's a 2. Maybe I want to flag this as inappropriate. That will send Katherine a message that says, one of your messages has been marked as inappropriate. Perusall's AI system also does scan for inappropriate language, plagiarism, if it sees the same comment copied multiple times, like if a student figures out that one of their comments is really engaging and tries to copy it from chapter to chapter, it'll give them 0 points for that and flag it. But we really haven't had an issue with students trying to really beat the system, because I think, well, I'm sure they try, but it takes less time for them to simply do the work. And most of them are incentivized by that community spirit, like seeing that these are the people that they're going to see in their labs later that week or in the lecture later that week. They have a sense of that social pressure to kind of just tune in with Perusall instead of trying to game it. So this is what Lance and I look at each week, and I'm going to bump it back to him here in a second to kind of go through how we use this. But for each assignment, Perusall will generate what it calls a confusion report. But these are questions with common words, things that students are getting stuck on. You can see the number of times they've been upvoted. But these are what we end up in class referring to as the engaging questions of the week. So these are questions that have come up that have gotten quite a bit of engagement. They tend to rank highly, they're scoring highly. And actually, let me go ahead and bump it back to Lance to show you the types of questions that students kind of ask that get flagged here. Would that be all right, Lance?
Yeah, so on Thursdays, what we do is we take these confusion reports and we're looking for questions that are upvoted a lot or that are really interesting or that demonstrate kind of maybe a higher level of thinking. And here's some good examples. So the top two are kind of sort of traditional geology questions where we can maybe expand beyond what's in the reading. So for example, volcanic gases, we capture those. What can we learn? Can we predict when volcanoes are going to erupt, for example? That allows us to talk about that. The next question you see here is an example of a student making a connection beyond what they would get in the reading or a personal connection. So we were talking about hotspots and rifts, and there they relate that to Yellowstone. So that provides a good avenue for us to connect with the students and say things like, hey, I've been to Yellowstone. That's my favorite place on the planet. Here's how this works. So it allows us to connect at a different level. And then the last two are really good examples of where you can sort of take the discussion. I like the one about plate tectonics and Alfred Wegener. The student recognizes that in Wegener's day, they didn't have all the science we have. So, where can we go forward with science? What part of it, what role will it play? What I really love about the engaging question, one is it allows us to be much more student-centered with our discussions, because we're taking their questions, the things they're struggling with or they just want to learn more about, and throwing it back at them, providing feedback on it. And while this is going on, Katherine and I will tag team. So these, one of these may be my question that I go over, but meanwhile in the chat, it'll often be lit up with, you said this, but what does this really mean? So it's an opportunity for us to probe deeper with it. And then the other thing I love about this, if you've taught, and it sounds like most of you have, these big courses where you have 100 students, sometimes it's really difficult for a student to talk to you, but it's easy for them to go into Perusall, highlight something and put in a question that we would have otherwise never heard. And sometimes these questions are really off the wall and require us to think a lot. One of the things that I like to do is inject humor in this. So this is a question about harnessing earthquakes. So if you go on to the next one, I kind of tie this back to the difficulty in knowing when they're going to actually happen and using Back to the Future as an example here, and try to, again, inject some humor. So it was really funny when we did this in class, because I talked about how the experiment went awry and the time machine got destroyed and all this stuff. But in the chat, it just blew up, and they're like, "Hey, wait a minute, what is this?" But again, as you can see, I'm definitely a proponent of this proposal. It's worked great for us.